1738 in the Nether. When was I in the Nether? Oh, here's the link. Bro, I'm so stupid. I click on the link and then I go away from it. Oh, that wasn't that much slower. Okay, I wasn't that much slower. Wait. Okay. This is so I was 31 seconds slower and then I lost on the feet. But what Ron did is like better in general, I think. He should have just gotten more buckets. He should have blown up the iron down here to get more buckets. Because if you have more buckets, you just overlap. Yo, I'm not allowed to type. You guys watch the Half-Land Privileges. No, my stomach has been a lot better. Like, knock on wood. Like, seriously. Like, seriously, man. After the second battle, like, every war was over. Every war, every war in the area was, like, that's how crazy the battle was. It was really long. Like, what I'm telling you, that's what I saw, the destruction I was at. It was just unbelievable.
Okay, we are doing actually 20 minutes of the log again, and then there are no. We just opened 9 via
heard of that city, but I've heard of Pompeii. Is that just like a city like that got taken at the exact same time from the exact same thing?
Yeah, it's one of Pompeii's neighbors, and it's buried even more deeply than Pompeii, and so it's better preserved. So it would be smaller. Pompeii probably had 30,000 people, give or take, city and territory. Herculaneum might have had 5,000 people. It was a much richer town. A lot of wealthy people had villas all around it. And it was right at the base of the volcano. So when it was buried by these pyroclastic flows, it was buried about 50 feet deep. And sediment had turned to stone pretty quickly, and almost like a tufa. And so when it was uncovered in the 18th century, it was found incredibly well preserved. A lot of like the carbonized furniture from Pompeii comes from Herculaneum, or the doors even, it's also Herculaneum. Pompeii is buried much less deeply and with kind of a looser sediment, and so things rot there much more quickly than they do in Herculaneum. There's a lot less preserved stuff.
Yeah.
Do you wish selfishly that the entirety of Rome had been covered by pyroclastic flow so that there'd be more preserved things?
I'd say I wish selfishly that no one found Pompeii until 2020, because when they found it in the 18th century, they just kind of dug for statues, destroyed everything, and left no record often of what they were finding. So I wish that we had better archaeology for a lot of the best sites we ever dug. Because people like the guy in Troy, Heinrich Schliemann, just cut a giant trench through the whole site, trying to find the lowest layers. Now there's nothing left in the ancient city. He just kind of hacked this giant trench right through it. And so, give 100 years later, we probably wouldn't do things like that. So,
Like you touched in here about the guy looking for rules. It was one of the ancient seven wonders of the guy
oh yeah,
dedicated his life. Was it the Artemis or?
yeah, it was John Turtlewood, very Victorian name. Yeah, he spent like 7 years trying to find it, and he got malaria like 17 times. He had his legs broken. He's attacked by bandits repeatedly. But he finally found it. So kudos to him. But yeah, I wouldn't do what he did. He used like steam shovels to dig it up. He dynamited a church on top of his temple to clear the ruins. So we're a little more careful. We're a little more careful these days with archaeology. But he got things done.
Talking about the wonders of the ancient world, you do say in here, if the Hanging Gardens of Babylon existed, do you not think that they did? Or is there only is it just something where people go like, I heard about them gardens, they sound really cool? Or is there nobody, is there no actual, I guess, first-hand accounts of someone going like, here I am standing at the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and these are truly one of the wonders of the world.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Butterfly.
Yeah, enough for a wonder, but they're fairly cool. Yeah, it's like a postcard. Here I am.
Yeah. This is like the 7th coolest thing I've seen right here.
Maybe 8th, 9th. Yeah, so we don't know, honestly. We have much later descriptions. The guy who wrote that list, the famous list of the 7 wonders, a guy named Antipater, I think it was, he wrote in the 2nd century BC, a time when those gardens were probably long gone, they never had existed. So all we have is sort of rumors of these gardens from much later on. It probably was some very elaborate garden built by Nebuchadnezzar in his palace quarters, but as we describe by Greek sources, we don't have any Babylonian accounts of them. They probably are kind of exaggerated, they're hanging in air, they're like an artificial mountain with plateaus and palms.
It's probably
bushes,
just like a wicker
flowers.
basket with like a fern in it.
Yeah, like one nice path between some flowers.
Yeah.
So probably more exaggerated than made up, I would think. There was something there that was very elaborate, but people were more impressed by the walls of Babylon, actually, than by the gardens. They had these gigantic mud brick walls that would drive supposedly 2 chariots side by side on top of the walls. They were so thick.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Colossus, bro, it's super badass. Still around. Do you have one that a favorite, or one that you would love to see in its heyday more than the other? I mean, I'm sure you want to see all of them.
That's a good question. I think that the one that would have been most impressive to us was the statue of Zeus at Olympia. It was big. It was like 35 feet high. I think just the effect of it. We're used to seeing marble statues in the ancient world that are kind of pitted. They're not painted anymore. They're worn down. This was made of the skin of ivory and gold. The rest was gold. And glass eyes. And it would have been in this very darkened space with this pool of oil in its face to kind of reflect the light. So it would have seemed almost supernatural, I think. All the glow of the ivory and that gold kind of reflecting off that oil. And just a few lamps to light it and temple doors 30 feet away. So it would have seemed much more impressive, despite it not being maybe as of an engineering feat as some of the other wonders. Much more impressive to us than buildings might have. But they were pretty wonderful. I think they labeled it up to the billing.
I do have a fantastic segue, actually.
Well, I was going
all
to
right.
ask you if you had one. Really wanted a favorite.
Me? Hold on, let me think here. Hold on. Ancient wonder, you said? That's an excellent question. No, I actually think, dude, I think the Colossus is so cool just because it's like,
Yeah.
you're in our fucking territory. Bring your ship in.
Supposedly, in the reign and time of Nero, there's a woman called Locusta who calls herself sort of a provider of medicines and potions, but is a poisoner who is used to kill the Emperor Claudius, for example, supposedly. Because Emperor Claudius died after eating poisonous mushrooms that were kind of put in his dinner table. And the idea was that this Locusta, who actually is before his time, was this, kind of mistress of poisons. It's probably at least exaggerated by popular rumors, but we aren't totally sure. Oh yeah, I mean, there are people who are assassinated by poison needles in Rome. They're jabbed with a poison needle and they run off and they die in the street. And in general, it's kind of the broader thing about what alchemy, that's of course a medieval thing, but alchemy is kind of a weird fusion of ancient science and ancient astrology, combined. And all of that comes from the Roman world. So they invent astrology, for example. For them, it's scientific. The planet's influence, the world in certain ways determined by our horoscope. And they assume that elements have sympathies determined by their natural properties. The gold has certain characteristics, lead has others, and so forth. They don't try to transmute lead into gold like the medieval alchemists do, but all the techniques are pioneered by the Romans. Often in Egypt, where they have kind of this interesting fusion of magic and philosophy and kind of medicine.
I meant more like alchemy, like potion making and elixirs
right.
and salves, and then they go this will make you fertile, and in reality, it's just like arsenic or something.
Oh yeah. We actually have these giant, a manual, called a Dioscorides, an herbal manual, that goes through like hundreds of these potions. They're mostly for medical purposes. But of course, the flip side is that if you know how to cure someone, you know how to kill them too. And there are all kinds of poisons. Supposedly, King Mithridates of Pontus drinks every day an antidote to all known poisons, so he can't be killed by poison anyway.
Yeah.
And then the story is he tries to poison himself at the end of his life, and the Romans are coming for him, and he can't because he's had too much of his antidote. So someone just stabs him. But yeah, so it's a thing, and there definitely are people who are known, at least reputed to be poisoners.
That's pretty awesome. I wonder how you advertise your,
Yeah, right.
your career.
Regular apothecary.
Yeah, nothing to see here.
Yeah.
Potions.
Yeah. Here's a question from Houston.
Hey Sam, hey Food, hey Dr. Garrett. I was just curious as to any crime underlord syndicate or anything happening back in the day, back in Rome or Greece, any cool crime lords that I haven't heard anything about?
Yeah, the question of organized crime is a tantalizing one. So supposedly before Augustus restores order in the Roman world, this is procedures that by 30 BC, there are professional guilds of criminals in Rome, like guilds of thieves, who are well organized and are terrorizing the city. But we know only that Augustus were present. So they existed, absolutely. We just only know about them in this one brief moment of disorder that kind of surface and are visible to our historians. The problem is that our sources are so fixated in high politics on, who's killing whom, who's the emperor, who's the emperor sleeping with. And so we don't know what's happening below that very high social strata. But it is happening, absolutely. Rome is a huge city, 1 million people. And it's not really policed at all. There are the Praetorian guards that keep the emperor's life. There are the vigiles, these night watchmen that keep fires from spreading. But really, it's kind of the Wild West. And so we assume that this one brief mention of guilds of criminals in the reign of Augustus is the tip of the iceberg that we probably never see in its entirety because there's no real evidence for it.
So the watchmen that would make sure fires were spreading, if you were getting mugged, they'd probably just be like, it's not a fire.
Yeah, suck to suck.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably would stop crimes. They were probably have a direct effect that when they showed up, because they were carrying torches, they would discourage criminals from thronging the main thoroughfares. But there was no street lighting in ancient Rome until late antiquity. Even then, only a few streets. And there are only a few bands of these guys. Their whole job, their main job, is to blow the fire, and to call the alarm and keep it from spreading. They wouldn't actually put it out. They would just demolish the houses around that house, pull it all down. That was enough. how about to get woken up if your house is being demolished around you because the neighbor's house caught on fire?
They just come in with a sledgehammer and just start knocking it down. Or...
Oh yeah, they had like battering rams and stuff. And they would just tear these buildings down. They had to make fire breaks. Otherwise, they can spread quite rapidly on summer nights when they're just on wind.
Yeah. Huh. Actually, very relevant to what you just said about there only being certain roads that are lit up. This guy Grady has a relevant question.
Good segue.
Okay, I would like to know,
Fucking kill me.
is there like particularly like shitty roads in the Roman Empire where people were like, whatever you do, don't go down like I-95? Is there like renowned roads or places that you would travel that were like horrible? They were just like absolutely shitty and everyone was like, this sucks.
Like a crime island type.
And it's like most of Rome, which are their sources, to be honest. And there were certain neighborhoods like the Suburra, which is sort of behind the Forum. Is a
One
famously,
miss! Kill
it's not
myself
squalid,
now!
kind of, working class, let's say, and very
gritty.
gritty. And it's only
It's a
relative that they're
miss.
spoken in like some islands, the Aegean, and other places east of there. And so the Romans themselves were puzzled by this. They're like, where the hell did this language come from, the Etruscan language? And they thought the Etruscans were migrants from the east. They weren't. They probably just stayed in place. And as these new languages came around, and they kept speaking their old language, which dates back to who knows how long, back in the Stone Age at some point. And just kind of their language is a relic, kind of like Basque is in modern Spain. Things like that. And there were so many civilizations that are just names to us. The Romans might mention a people, a tribe, or a language that we just have nothing from. The Romans did not preserve, by and large, the literatures that they existed of peoples they conquered. So from Carthage, they had these giant libraries. They kept one agricultural treatise because it was useful, and destroyed all their literature, all of their poetry, all of their songs. That's all gone. And so the Romans themselves are responsible in many ways for wiping the slate of what came before, both deliberately when they conquered people, and accidentally by making this kind of monoculture where there's one dominant language, Latin, over a huge part of Eurasia. And so everyone learns that language, they forget what comes before, and we have archaeology to correct some of that. We have, we find the pottery of an older civilization or other traces of it, but we just can't animate those bones very well because it's just, we just have these bare fragments, and the culture that lay behind them has all been wiped off the map 2,000 years ago or more.
It's weird how they seem to, I don't want to say like covet, but they do look at people that they assimilate into their culture and go like, oh, I'm going to take this and that because it's awesome. But at the same time, they go, I'm only taking this agricultural thing, and then the rest of it is getting burned. It's weird how it's like that selective,
And normally it's not like they're trying to destroy it. There's some things they do attack, but the Druids they hate because the Druids both practice human sacrifice, which they're not really into, and they're political leaders. They have a lot of power in society, so they wipe out the Druids wherever they find them. But in general, they're not really targeting other cultures' beliefs. Like they don't bother Judaism, for example, which has been around for a long time before the Romans show up. They only worry if you're seditious, if you're undermining their empire in some way. And they only care about your stuff, though, if it's useful to them. It's a very kind of utilitarian view of the world. If you can help Rome, okay, welcome to the pack, you're in. But if it's not useful to us, if they don't destroy it, they'll just kind of discard it. They won't bother preserving it. They won't try to commemorate it in any way. They aren't interested, for the most part, in history for its own sake, the way that modern scholars are. They care about their own history, which includes Greek history, which includes Etruscan history, maybe a little bit, but does not include, the history of some random Gallic tribe, for example.
Yeah. You mentioned Druids for a second. I like Druids, mostly from Diablo 2, but where exactly where are Druids from? And like culturally, and what exactly was their
The Scottish thing?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. They were the priestly caste, basically, of these Celtic peoples that lived from Ireland and Scotland all the way on down to Central Europe. So they were, we know about them from Roman sources by people like Caesar, for example, who conquers Gaul, and deals with a lot of these druids who are often part of the political system of Gaul. So like the brother of a chieftain might be the head druid. We hear about from, say, like Tacitus, for example, who writes this treatise about Britain, which has been conquered by the Romans by this time.
You
The Druids of
bitch!
Britain, who have this like long training process. They learn. There's no written scripture for the Druids. There's a lot of oral lore that they learn, passed down from like master to apprentice. So there's the priests, basically, the cultic experts of the Celtic peoples. And because they have so much weight in their society, so much power, the Romans don't trust them. And they try to wipe them out. They keep the political aristocracy, the warrior aristocracy. They work with those guys. But these priests they don't trust, and so they kind of remove their power and try and decapitate them pretty much wherever they encounter them.
And they did human sacrifices?
The Druids did, yes. It's like Caesar described the original Wicker Man from that old, horror flick, where they bind posters inside a giant figure of wooden straw and light it up as a sacrifice to the gods. Supposedly on the Isle of Anglesey, throughout the west of Britain, Romans found a grove where the branches are draped with human entrails from sacrifices. It might be barbarian baiting to some degree, where they're kind of tarring them all with the same brush. They're all, awfully inhuman, and they're killing people left and right. But they pretty clearly did practice human sacrifice. Some of the bog bodies they find in Britain, these guys preserved by like the chemicals in the bogs for thousands of years, were human sacrifices that were probably victims of the Druids.
That's frustrating.